Alright, how's it going everybody? My name is Infamous Isaac. I'm here with a video on Solo, a Star Wars movie. A movie that came out back in 2018 and is the final Star Wars movie that I'm going to be watching through my little foray back into Star Wars. It ended as quickly as it started. So without further ado, let's get into the non-spoilers for this movie. So sorry about the sudden change between Minecraft and then this, but I'm redoing the non-spoiler section because I didn't get my points across well in the first one. So know that this movie is about Han Solo and he appears in the original trilogy, so there is going to be references to what happens in that trilogy in this movie. And if you don't care about that, then you can watch the movie. It still has a story to tell, whether it's about Han Solo or not, but it does enhance the viewing experience if you know what the references are. But regardless, this movie to me is a 7 out of 10, and I'm going to be comparing a little bit to Rogue One. No spoilers for either one, so don't worry. But Rogue One to me has a better second half than this one, right? But this movie is more consistent. It's consistently good in both parts. So I don't. To me, I prefer Rogue One because the second half is so good. But this movie does a great job with the characters that it has, and it tells a story a way that I haven't seen Star Wars tell it before. Because you have Star Wars, and usually they're about this crazy imperial threat with this crazy looming guy with all these powers and lightsabers and stuff like that. But here, it's just a guy with a gun. Multiple people in this movie have guns. You don't see like the Force or anything like that or lightsabers. Period. You know, these are just guys living in the Star Wars universe to the point where that to me feels so different from what we see in the mainline Star Wars movies, and that's so cool. You know, so I gotta give this movie credit to the directors and everybody because they made the most of what they could with Han Solo. But Han Solo himself was great. The characters were cool, more memorable to me than Rogue One. So I gotta give them points for that as well. Overall, the story was, it wasn't anything crazy. It was just nice themes in that story to see how Han Solo became the person that he is now, how he grew up, and how he learned to be the guy that he was, right? Overall, though, this movie, I gotta give it a 7. It didn't push that threshold of 8 territory or anything above that, but it didn't dip low enough to be like, yeah, this is a 6 to a 6.5. Nah, like, it's consistent, like I said earlier. So, I'm gonna give it a 7. The music isn't anything crazy. The CGI isn't really there, but the visual effects are always great with Star Wars. So, I gotta give them that as well. But overall, let me get on to the spoilers, so, as per usual, know that I will be getting into spoilers for this movie. If you don't want to be spoiled, then leave now. You know, go watch it on Disney Plus type stuff. And if you want to come back, then come back. But if not, then at least you watched it, right? Let me know what you thought of it down below. Put a spoiler tag on it, all that type of stuff, right? But regardless, this movie starts off with the titular main character, Han Solo, where we see him on Corellia, a planet where he's basically been made a slave by Proxima, who he works for and steals for, and there's a bunch of other children here as well who work along with him to steal for her, and that's the only way that they can survive. Like, they're basically indentured servants in a way. Being his usual self is stealing from some people, and they're the wrong type of people to mess with. So he's getting chased. He goes back to the hideout and he finds his girlfriend, Kira, right? So those two are basically like, hey, let's work and get out of here. Let's get out of Corellia. This place is terrible. And so they go to Proxima, and Han is just like, yo, I got the stuff here. But I got robbed, so I can't really do anything about that, haha. And then she's like, listen, dog, you're a scoundrel, you're a scum rat, alright? Don't you mess with me. And then Han pulls out a rock, right? And then he is my favorite part of the movie so far. He literally clicks his tongue like, this is a thermal detonator. And then Proxima's like, no, it's not. It's a rock. You clicked your tongue. It is just so funny, dog. That joke had me laughing for like a couple minutes straight. He basically finds a way to get him and Kira out of there. They go to basically like immigration to get away from there, and he has his little like fusion cell, right? And it's used for fuel. And since this is an imperial checkpoint, he uses it to bargain with one of the people letting people through and all that, right? Since they don't have any IDs. So Han uses that as a bargaining chip. They're being chased by Proxima because of that stunt that he pulled. So once he gets through, Kira gets stuck behind because they grab her just in time. And then the checkpoint lady's just like, we have an intruder, we have an intruder. And so Han has to hide out and basically apply for the fighter pilot business for the Imperial Army because that's how he plans to get out of Corellia and to come back for Kira, right? So he applies, and 3 years later, he's a crazy fighter pilot. He's working for them now. He's doing great. He meets some people. He meets Beckett and he meets Val. And so those two, we soon come to find out that they're thieves and that they're going to steal from the Imperial Army. Han wants in on this, but they basically snitch on him and say that he's a deserter. So they throw him into a pit, right? And this is where we meet Chewbacca, right? This is where that prior information needs to come in because Chewbacca is in the original trilogy. I'm gonna go ahead and continue the story like you have watched the original trilogy, but if you haven't, then just be warned that I am gonna spoil that. But regardless, Chewie's there and they start fighting because they don't know each other yet, right? But they manage to escape with some quick thinking and because Han speaks his language, so they become quick friends. And then they go to find Beckett before they leave, and Beckett gives him a chance. He gives the kid a chance. So now that basically they're trying to find a deal, right? A deal that's gonna go down with a train. What they're looking for is coaxium, not fusion cells. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, but I'm not good with this type of stuff. And so they get ready to go on this train, and the night before they have like a little camp out, basically talking about getting to know each other. And Val and Becker are just basically like, yo, so what are you guys doing here, right? What are you doing this for? Because they're doing it because they need it. They need the money, right? And they're in love. And Han is just basically like, I'm doing it for my girlfriend. And Chewie's like, I have my tribe who's enslaved, right? I'm trying to free them as best as I can. And the fighter pilot that they have, it's a third guy. He's an Ardennian. I think that's what they're called. The day of the heist comes. Beckett, Chewie, and Han are all on the train themselves. Val is away from the train, and the fighter pilot himself, he's flying the vehicle. So things lead to another, and a rival marauder group shows up, Enfys, and they basically try to steal the Coxium cells as well. And things lead to another. Val dies, and the fighter pilot guy gets shot. So Han has to fly the ship himself, and now it's just Beckett and Chewie along with Han, and they're trying to keep the Coaxium cells, right, because they need them. And so as they're holding on to the cargo, a rock is in between them, and so they have to let go. And what we find out is that Beckett was actually doing this for the Crimson Dawn, a syndicate group who are merciless, evil people. And so Beckett goes back to the Crimson Dawn with Han, and he's like, "Yo, listen, just let me do the talking. You don't know anybody here. Let me do it myself, right?" And Han gets really, really lucky because he meets Kira here, and it turns out that she's a Crimson Dawn member. And so they're having a great time. They're chatting, all this. We meet the leader of the Crimson Dawn, and he's just like, "Yo, so what are you gonna do for me, Beckett? You failed me. Do I just kill you?" And then him, Han, Kira, Beckett, all of them, they're negotiating a deal, right? And so basically, they end up on a new deal where they're gonna get unrefined coaxium cells, and they're gonna refine them, and then they're gonna have the leader come to them, and then he'll have the cells, they'll get their money, and everything will be squared away, right? So now they need a ship, and they find Lando Calrissian. So he is like, all right, shoot, I'll hope if I get 20% of the cut. That's basically what they agreed upon, right? Him, his assistant L3, everybody else, they all go to the mining facility where they're gonna find out unrefined coxium, right? And so this is all a crazy thing because Lando's on the ship. We have L3, Kira, Chewbacca, Han, and Beckett all going into the mine. Chewie and Han are all slaves. You have Beckett, who's actually one of the people, like he dressed up as one of them. And Kira, she's impersonating a political leader, right? A political figure. So things lead to another, and a rebellion starts in the mines where Chewbacca's people are there, so he frees them. L3 frees a bunch of robots and androids and all that type of stuff who are in the mines because she's a liberator, she wants to free her people because she wants them to have rights, right? And so they leave with the Coxium in tow, and L3 gets shot. She just gets disintegrated. She dies, unfortunately. But everybody else makes it out alive, right? Lando gets shot in the arm, but everything's good, right? So one thing I didn't mention was that they actually go through a wormhole, a maelstrom, and this is the whole section that connects the mines to the next section of the story, and this man Han goes through this whole warp space thing in 12 parsecs. Sounds like nonsense, and most of all because it is, but it's impressive in their universe. But that's basically what happens between them and this next section. So they all land on the planet where they need to refine the stuff. Lando stays on the ship. Everybody else goes out, and we're basically just trying to figure out what to do because the refinery's there, everything, so on and so forth. And Enfys shows back up because they've been tracking them this entire time. Lando leaves because he saw the first sign of trouble. He did not care. The Marauders basically reveal that they're a part of the Rebel Alliance. They're trying to fight against the Imperial Army so that people can have more freedom and that everything could be good, you know? Beckett doesn't agree with this and he's gonna leave. So he's just gonna leave the money with Han and they can do whatever they want with it, right? He's gonna go to Tatooine and have a raid going on. He's gonna have one final deal. So Han and Kira and everybody just works out a deal with the Marauders and they're like, alright, well you guys can have it. We don't really need it, right? And I don't want to work with the Crimson Dawn anymore because they're evil people. But the Crimson Dawn still show up, so they still need their money and they have a plan, right? So Han enters, and the guy immediately knows, like, hey, so how'd you get it to be this fake, right? And Han's like, what are you talking about? This is the real thing. And he's like, no, 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 but it's fake. I know it is because one of your friends told me, and it was Beckett. And Beckett betrayed them, basically telling him, like, hey, don't trust anybody, you know? And Han is just basically like, huh, I knew you'd say that, but this is the real thing. Like, this is generally it. All hell breaks loose. Beckett leaves with Chewie to basically take the Coxium for himself and find whatever to do with it. That leaves Kira and Han versus the main bad guy, right? So they're beefing. She manages to kill him. Han is like, yo, what's going on? And she's like, listen, I'll be right behind you, alright? Just go. Trust me. We'll be good, alright? And when he leaves, Kira calls somebody important, right? Somebody important. And the person that we see is a Sith, right? And that person is Darth Maul. So if you don't know about the prequel trilogy, Darth Maul is a disciple of Darth Sidious, aka Emperor Palpatine, right? And so she basically just betrays Han, but he doesn't know that, right? So he just leaves to find Darth Maul. So one thing I neglected to mention was that Beckett and Han had one last showdown. That's the reason why he was able to get to Chewie. And he meets him with a blaster, and they're just like, well, this is the end of the line, right? You can't get away from here. One of us isn't going to leave, right? And Beckett was planning on killing him. But Han, learning from his mistakes, shoots first while he's talking. And then Beckett's like, that was smart, kid. I was going to kill you. And he's dying in his arms, and Han goes over to him because at the end of the day, they were still partners. And they did trust each other, at least to some semblance. But it couldn't go on like this, you know? He betrayed him. So Beckett dies, and now Han is here with Chewie. So that leaves Han and Chewie on the planet still. They're trying their best to figure out what to do. And they're talking to Marauders. They're like, yo, you guys can join us. You know, the Rebel army, we're growing bigger and stronger every day. And Han's like, no, it's not my type of style, you know? I fly solo type thing. And him and Chewie leave. They find a way to get back to where Lando is. And they have one final battle. And Han was right. Because when they first met, Han and him had a battle where they were gamblers, right? And so we find out that Lando's cheating, but Han doesn't figure that out. So this time, now that he's seen, like, yo, he's up to something, he takes his time to dap him up, basically to see, like, yo, you're cheating. And so he bets the Millennium Falcon again, and he wins it this time. And now the Millennium Falcon is his. And that's how we get to today in the original trilogy where Han has the Millennium Falcon and he's a gamer and he knows Lando Calrissian. He knows all these people. He met Chewbacca, everything, right? This is how we got to that person. And that's the end of the movie, basically. But regardless, this movie's cool, you know, like it definitely is a treat for Star Wars fans. And I definitely enjoyed it because Han Solo is a great character. I really enjoy how he really is a gambler, he's a risk taker, and he always bet on himself before anybody else because he knows as long as he can have confidence in himself and his technical skill with being a fighter pilot, he can make it anywhere, you know. And his crazy dead eye aim that he learned from Beckett, and on top of that, just him flipping his gun and everything. That's so cool. But overall, Han Solo, they did a great job characterizing him and just showing that he may be a scum rat, but he does have good in him. He has unrefined gold, right? And that gold we see in the original trilogy with Leia and Luke as well. So it's like, oh shoot, you know, like it's always been there. It was never hey, I'm a bad guy. I develop over time. It's like they needed to bring that out of him because it's always been there. And I really appreciate that. The characters besides him were alright. Chewie was great as ever, so I don't mind him. But Lando was great, not as good as Han, but great. Because Donald Glover was playing him too, so I'm kind of biased. You have Kira and Beckett. I thought they were okay, nothing crazy. And everybody else was just mostly filling. You know, they didn't really do much. The story was okay. It was basically like don't trust anybody, but learning to trust people makes you better than the people that didn't trust, and all that stuff. So I thought it was a cool message. But overall, this just serves as a nice backstory for Han. This movie, overall, it's fun. It's enjoyable. Not the greatest thing you ever see. Not the best Star Wars movie you ever see. Not the most action heavy thing, whatever. But it's good, you know. You'll get a fun, enjoyable thing out of it. It's more of an adventure than it is an action movie. It's science fiction too, so you'll get that Star Wars tinge with the lore and the history and the space and everything. But overall, if you told me this was Star Wars and I didn't know who these people were, I would 60% believe that hey, this isn't Star Wars. 40% because of the planets. But that's it for me for now. That's the end of the Star Wars little binge that I went on. It was only two movies, but hey, I enjoyed them nonetheless. And next, you know, we're gonna see where we head from here. Maybe a new series, maybe more movies, who knows? But can't wait to see where we go, alright? I'll see you all in the next video though, and until next time, hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.